Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls her age. While her classmates spent weekends at the mall or gossiping about boys, she was climbing trees, fixing her father's old motorcycle, or practicing martial arts in the garage. Her small frame often fooled people into thinking she was fragile, but Sarah possessed something far more valuable than physical size: an unbreakable spirit and razor-sharp intelligence. Growing up in a military family, Sarah heard countless stories about courage, sacrifice, and honor around the dinner table. Her father, a retired Marine, never treated her differently because she was a girl. He taught her to shoot, to think strategically, and most importantly, to never give up. Her mother, a former Army nurse, showed her that strength came in many forms. These lessons shaped Sarah into someone who refused to accept limitations others tried to place on her. The decision to join the Navy came naturally. Sarah excelled in her studies, graduated with honors, and surprised everyone when she announced her intention to try out for the most elite fighting force in the world, the Navy SEALs. The program had only recently opened to women, and the few who had attempted it faced enormous challenges. Many people, including some family friends, tried to discourage her. They pointed out the brutal physical demands, the mental pressure, and the fact that no woman had successfully completed the training yet. Sarah listened politely to their concerns, but never wavered in her determination. She spent 2 years preparing her body and mind for what lay ahead. She ran marathons, learned advanced swimming techniques, studied military tactics, and pushed herself beyond what she thought possible. Every morning before dawn, she was training. Every evening after work, she was studying. Her dedication was absolute. When the acceptance letter arrived, Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She was one of only 3 women selected for that training cycle, joining a class of 42 candidates. The other participants were impressive specimens: former college athletes, military veterans with years of experience, and men who had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment. Looking around the room during orientation, Sarah couldn't help but notice the skeptical glances directed her way. The training facility was intimidating even before the exercises began. Located on a sprawling military base, it featured obstacle courses that looked like medieval torture devices, swimming pools designed to test the limits of human endurance, and classrooms where the brightest tactical minds would be challenged. The instructors were legendary figures, SEALs who had served in the most dangerous missions around the world. Their reputations preceded them, and their standards were impossibly high. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Reynolds was the lead instructor for Sarah's class. A 20-year veteran with multiple combat deployments, he had seen countless candidates come and go. His weathered face showed the marks of battles fought in distant lands, and his piercing eyes seemed to see straight through to a person's soul. Reynolds had a reputation for being fair, but absolutely merciless when it came to maintaining standards. He believed that the training needed to be harder than anything the SEALs would face in real combat. From the very first day, it became clear that Sarah would face challenges beyond the already brutal standard curriculum. During the initial physical assessments, she performed well, but not exceptionally. Her running times were solid, her swimming was competent, and her strength scores met the minimum requirements. However, whispers began immediately among both instructors and fellow candidates. Some questioned whether the standards had been lowered to accommodate women. Others wondered if she would become a liability to her team in real combat situations. The doubt wasn't limited to whispered conversations. During group exercises, Sarah noticed that some candidates were reluctant to partner with her. When choosing teams for challenges, she was often selected last. The instructors, while maintaining professional demeanor, seemed to watch her more closely than others, as if waiting for her to fail. This extra scrutiny created additional pressure, but Sarah had learned long ago to channel external pressure into internal motivation. As the weeks progressed, the training intensified dramatically. Candidates were pushed to their physical and mental breaking points through sleep deprivation, extreme physical challenges, and psychological pressure designed to weed out all but the most determined individuals. The infamous Hell Week loomed ahead, a period during which most candidates would either prove themselves worthy or ring the bell that signified their voluntary withdrawal from the program. Sarah watched as stronger, more experienced candidates began to crack under the pressure. Men who had dominated the early physical challenges started making mental mistakes during tactical exercises. Some quit outright, while others were removed by instructors for failing to meet standards. The class that had started with 42 candidates was shrinking rapidly, and Sarah remained determined not to join the list of casualties. The real test of her resolve came during a particularly challenging combat simulation exercise. The candidates were divided into small teams and tasked with infiltrating a mock enemy compound under simulated combat conditions. Sarah found herself paired with Jake Morrison, a former Army Ranger who had made no secret of his belief that women didn't belong in special operations. Morrison was everything Sarah wasn't: tall, powerfully built, and supremely confident in his abilities. As their team moved through the exercise, Morrison repeatedly questioned Sarah's decisions and suggestions. When she proposed an alternative route that would avoid a heavily defended checkpoint, he dismissed it as overly cautious. When she spotted what appeared to be a trap in their planned approach, he accused her of being paranoid. The tension between them was affecting the entire team's performance, and Sarah could see the instructors taking notes on their clipboards. The exercise took a dramatic turn when Morrison's aggressive approach led the team straight into an ambush. Simulated enemy forces surrounded them, and what should have been a straightforward infiltration mission became a desperate fight for survival. Morrison, so confident moments before, seemed paralyzed by the unexpected development. The other team members looked to him for leadership, but he offered only confused and contradictory orders. Sarah found herself in a position she had trained for, but never expected to face so soon. With her team pinned down and their leader effectively frozen, she needed to take action. Years of preparation, study, and mental conditioning crystallized into a moment of absolute clarity. She could see the entire tactical situation laid out before her like a chess game, with clear moves that could lead to success or failure. Without waiting for permission or approval from Morrison, Sarah began issuing clear, decisive commands to her teammates. Her voice cut through the chaos of simulated gunfire and explosions with unexpected authority. She directed 2 team members to provide covering fire, while she and another candidate flanked the enemy position using the alternative route she had suggested earlier. Her tactical knowledge, gained through countless hours of study and preparation, proved invaluable as she guided her team through a complex maneuver that turned their desperate situation into a successful mission completion. The instructors watched in stunned silence as Sarah's team not only escaped the ambush, but completed their objective faster than any other group that day. Chief Reynolds found himself genuinely surprised by the tactical sophistication of her decisions and the natural leadership she displayed under extreme pressure. When the exercise concluded, Morrison was notably quiet. His earlier confidence replaced by grudging respect for the woman he had underestimated so completely. Word of Sarah's performance spread quickly through the training facility. Fellow candidates who had previously dismissed her began to pay closer attention to her suggestions during group planning sessions. Instructors who had been waiting for her to fail started evaluating her more objectively, judging her actions rather than their preconceptions. However, this newfound attention also brought increased scrutiny and higher expectations that added to the already intense pressure of the program. The physical challenges continued to push Sarah to her limits. During underwater training exercises, her smaller lung capacity put her at a disadvantage compared to larger candidates. The extended swimming sessions in cold water tested her endurance in ways that favorited naturally bigger and stronger individuals. There were moments when she questioned whether her determination was enough to overcome the basic physiological differences between herself and her male counterparts. One particularly brutal training session involved carrying heavy equipment across difficult terrain for miles while maintaining tactical awareness and readiness for combat scenarios. Sarah struggled with the weight, falling behind the main group multiple times. Some candidates offered to help carry her load, but she refused, knowing that accepting assistance would only reinforce doubts about her capabilities. Every step became a battle of will against physical limitations, and every stumble felt like ammunition for those who believed she didn't belong there. Jake Morrison, surprisingly, became one of her most unlikely supporters during this period. The combat simulation had humbled him and opened his eyes to the difference between physical strength and tactical intelligence. He began studying Sarah's approach to problems, noting how she used preparation and strategy to overcome situations where brute force might fail. Their rivalry transformed into a professional respect that made both of them better candidates. The mental warfare aspects of training proved to be where Sarah truly excelled. Instructors would deliberately create stressful, confusing situations designed to break down a candidate's ability to think clearly under pressure. They would scream contradictory orders, create seemingly impossible time constraints, and constantly change the parameters of exercises without warning. Many strong candidates cracked under this psychological pressure, but Sarah's analytical mind allowed her to find patterns and solutions even in chaotic situations. Chief Reynolds began to take particular interest in Sarah's progress. As a veteran instructor, he had developed an instinct for identifying candidates who possessed the rare combination of physical capability, mental toughness, and tactical intelligence necessary for special operations. Sarah intrigued him because she challenged his assumptions about what made an effective operator. Her approach was different from the traditional model, but her results spoke for themselves. During a complex navigation exercise conducted in complete darkness across unfamiliar terrain, Sarah demonstrated the fruits of her meticulous preparation. While other candidates relied primarily on physical endurance and basic compass skills, she had studied topographical maps extensively and developed mental models of the landscape. When several teams became lost and fell hours behind schedule, Sarah's team completed the course ahead of schedule and provided assistance to struggling teammates. The instructors designed increasingly difficult scenarios to test the remaining candidates. Sarah found herself in survival situations where her smaller size actually became an advantage. During an escape and evasion exercise, her ability to hide in spaces that larger candidates couldn't access allowed her to avoid capture for the entire duration of the exercise. Her success forced the instructors to acknowledge that diversity in physical capabilities could be a tactical asset rather than a liability. As Hell Week approached, the psychological pressure intensified dramatically. Candidates were sleep-deprived, physically exhausted, and mentally strained to their breaking points. The famous bell that signified voluntary withdrawal from the program rang with increasing frequency as even the most determined individuals reached their limits. Sarah watched strong, capable candidates walk away from their dreams, and she used their departures as motivation to dig even deeper into her own reserves of determination. The final weeks before Hell Week brought a shift in group dynamics. The remaining candidates had developed a respect for each other that transcended initial prejudices and assumptions. Sarah was no longer seen as an outsider trying to prove herself worthy, but as an integral member of a team united by shared struggle and mutual dependence. Her tactical insights during planning sessions were sought out and valued, and her encouragement helped struggling teammates push through their darkest moments. Chief Reynolds found himself reconsidering his own biases about women in combat roles. Sarah's performance had been consistently strong, but more importantly, she had made everyone around her better. Her presence had forced other candidates to be more creative in their thinking and more collaborative in their approach. The unit cohesion that developed partly because of her influence was exactly what elite military units needed to function effectively in combat. The night before Hell Week officially began, Sarah lay in her bunk reviewing everything she had learned and experienced during the previous months. She thought about all the people who had doubted her, including the voice in her own head that sometimes whispered that she wasn't strong enough or tough enough for what lay ahead. Tomorrow would bring the ultimate test of everything she had worked toward her entire life. Sarah closed her eyes and visualized success. She had learned that physical preparation was only part of what would carry her through the challenges ahead. Mental toughness, tactical intelligence, teamwork, and an unshakable belief in her own capabilities would be just as important. She had already proven to herself and others that she belonged here, but the hardest test still lay ahead. Hell Week arrived like a storm that had been building on the horizon for months. The remaining 23 candidates gathered in the pre-dawn darkness, their faces showing a mixture of determination and barely controlled fear. Chief Reynolds stood before them with his usual stern expression, but Sarah detected something different in his demeanor, a sense that this week would test not just the candidates, but his own understanding of what made an effective special operator. The first challenge came immediately, with no warm-up or gradual introduction to the hell that awaited them. Candidates were ordered into the freezing ocean surf, fully clothed, required to link arms and perform coordinated exercises while waves crashed over their heads. The shock of the cold water drove several candidates to their limits within the first hour. Sarah's smaller body mass made her more susceptible to hypothermia, but she had prepared mentally for exactly this scenario. As candidates began to show signs of serious distress from the cold, Sarah noticed something crucial that the instructors might have missed. Tommy Chen, a fellow candidate who had become a close friend and training partner, was displaying early symptoms of dangerous hypothermia. His speech was becoming slurred, and his movements were losing coordination. The instructors were focused on maintaining the intensity of the exercise and might not notice until it was too late. Sarah faced an immediate dilemma. Breaking formation or speaking out of turn during Hell Week exercises could result in immediate dismissal from the program. However, Tommy's condition was deteriorating rapidly, and she couldn't stand by and watch a teammate suffer serious injury. She made a split-second decision that demonstrated the kind of moral courage that separated true leaders from those who simply followed orders. Moving closer to Tommy while maintaining the required formation, Sarah began quietly coaching him through breathing techniques and mental focus exercises she had learned during her preparation. She shared her own body heat when possible and kept him engaged in conversation to monitor his mental state. Her actions caught the attention of Chief Reynolds, who initially moved toward them with what appeared to be disciplinary intent. Instead, Reynolds observed Sarah's subtle but effective intervention and recognized it as exactly the kind of teamwork and situational awareness that elite units required. Rather than punishing her initiative, he made note of her ability to maintain mission focus while caring for her teammates. This moment marked a turning point in how the lead instructor viewed Sarah's potential as a special operator. The week continued with a relentless series of physical and mental challenges designed to break down every candidate's resistance. Sleep deprivation became a constant companion, with candidates allowed only brief periods of rest between grueling exercises. Sarah discovered that her extensive preparation in meditation and mental discipline gave her an advantage in maintaining focus and decision-making capability even when physically exhausted. During a particularly challenging boat race exercise, Sarah's team found themselves falling behind due to the physical demands of carrying their heavy inflatable boat across sandy beaches and through surf that seemed determined to drag them backward. The other teams included larger, stronger candidates who could power through the exercise with brute force. Sarah realized that her team needed a different approach to compete effectively. Drawing on her tactical training and natural problem-solving abilities, Sarah began analyzing the exercise like a strategic challenge, rather than simply a test of physical endurance. She noticed that teams who maintained better synchronization and timing were actually moving more efficiently than those who relied purely on individual strength. She convinced her team to focus on perfect coordination rather than maximum effort, turning their physical disadvantage into a strategic advantage. The change in approach was remarkable. Sarah's team began gaining ground on the leaders through superior technique and teamwork. Other candidates and instructors took notice as the underdog team steadily improved their position through intelligent application of energy and resources. Chief Reynolds watched with growing interest as Sarah demonstrated exactly the kind of adaptive leadership that made Special Operations Forces effective in unpredictable combat situations. The decisive moment came during a complex combat simulation that combined multiple skills and stressors into one overwhelming challenge. Candidates had to navigate through a mock enemy compound while sleep-deprived, physically exhausted, and under intense time pressure. The exercise was designed to push everyone beyond their limits and reveal their true capabilities under ultimate stress. Sarah's team was assigned a particularly difficult route that required them to neutralize multiple enemy positions while avoiding detection. As they moved through the compound, everything that could go wrong began to happen. Equipment malfunctioned, simulated casualties created additional burdens, and enemy forces seemed to anticipate their every move. Several team members began to show signs of cracking under the accumulated stress of the week. In the midst of this chaos, Chief Reynolds appeared as an additional complicating factor. Playing the role of a hostile interrogator, he began aggressively questioning team members and demanding answers about their mission parameters. This was a standard part of the exercise, designed to test candidates' ability to resist interrogation and maintain operational security even under extreme stress. When Reynolds approached Sarah with his intimidating presence and aggressive questioning, something unexpected happened. Instead of cowering or becoming defensive like many candidates did, Sarah maintained perfect composure and began engaging him in a way that demonstrated both respect for his authority and confidence in her own capabilities. Her responses were crisp, professional, and showed that she understood the exercise's purpose while refusing to be intimidated. Reynolds escalated the scenario, moving closer and raising his voice to increase the pressure. What happened next surprised everyone present, including Sarah herself. In a move that demonstrated both tactical awareness and incredible timing, she noticed that Reynolds had positioned his training weapon carelessly while focusing on his interrogation technique. Without breaking eye contact or changing her respectful tone, Sarah smoothly disarmed the chief petty officer in one fluid motion. The weapon was in her hands before Reynolds fully realized what had happened. The compound fell silent as every candidate and instructor present absorbed the implications of what they had just witnessed. Sarah didn't gloat or celebrate her success. Instead, she immediately returned the weapon to Reynolds with the same professional respect she had shown throughout the exercise. Her action demonstrated that she had been paying attention to every detail of her environment, even while under intense pressure, exactly the kind of situational awareness that could mean the difference between life and death in real combat situations. Chief Reynolds stared at Sarah for a long moment, before a slow smile spread across his weathered face. In 20 years of training candidates, he had rarely seen such a perfect combination of technical skill, tactical awareness, and mental composure under pressure. The woman who many had considered too weak to compete with male candidates had just disarmed one of the most experienced and respected instructors in the program. The remaining exercises of Hell Week passed in a blur of continued challenges, but the dynamic had fundamentally changed. Sarah was no longer fighting to prove she belonged. She had demonstrated her capabilities beyond any reasonable doubt. Fellow candidates sought her input on tactical problems, and instructors began treating her as they would any other high-performing candidate. When Hell Week finally ended, only 11 candidates remained from the original class of 42. Sarah stood among them, exhausted but triumphant, having proven that determination and intelligence could overcome physical limitations. She had not only survived the most challenging military training program in the world, but had excelled in ways that redefined what it meant to be a special operator. Chief Reynolds approached her after the final exercise with something she had never seen from him before: genuine respect and admiration. He told her that in all his years of training SEALs, he had rarely encountered a candidate who combined technical proficiency with such natural leadership ability. Her journey was far from over, but she had already changed how everyone around her thought about the possibilities for women in elite military units. Sarah looked back at the training facility that had been her home and battlefield for the past months, knowing that she had not only achieved her personal goal, but had opened doors for other women who would follow in her footsteps. The girl who many had thought was too weak to fight had proven that strength came in many forms, and that the most powerful weapons were often mental rather than physical.